Parkinson's disease, causes, symptoms, and treatments by Johanna Munson. You can affect change if you are bold, strong, and positive. Michael J. Fox. Parkinson's disease. What is the first image that comes to mind when you hear those words? It may be the tremors or the slow gait or the difficulty speaking. Maybe it's Muhammad Ali or Michael J. Fox, once such powerhouses of physical control, losing their ability to control their bodies. Parkinson's disease is a degenerative neural disease and is often slow-moving, with symptoms that can be mistaken for other conditions. Until recently, it has been hard to diagnose until much of the damage is done. A new diagnostic test has become available, alpha-syn-SAA, and it is the first to show the presence of a biomarker, the buildup of abnormal proteins in spinal fluid. The good news is that it has a 93% success rate in confirming diagnosis before symptoms appear. The bad news, it requires a spinal tap, a painful and invasive procedure. The PPMI, Parkinson's Progression Markers Initiative, is the worldwide consortium that developed the test. More information on this group is available at this website, https://www.ppmi.info.org. Researchers say there is potential for a blood test or even a mouth or nasal swab in the future. What are some of the first symptoms? A resting tremor or uncontrollable twitching often shows up first. The twitching may start in the little finger of one hand, as seen in the documentary Still, a Michael J. Fox movie, now streaming on Apple TV+. Fox was first diagnosed with young onset Parkinson's in 1991 at age 29. He continued his acting career and only went public in 1998 when he realized the impact on research and awareness he could have if he shared what he was going through. He established the Michael J. Fox Foundation for Research and has raised billions of dollars to find a cure. One symptom that may surprise you is a decreased sense of smell. My father wasn't diagnosed with Parkinson's until he was in his early 80s, but it was a running joke between my parents for decades that he couldn't smell the beautiful flowers my mother grew. Little did we know. Other indicators are stiffness, a slow gait, balance issues, and restless legs. Arthritis is a common misdiagnosis in the early stages. As the disease progresses, depression, urinary incontinence, constipation, and trouble swallowing, chewing, and speaking become apparent. What risk factors have been identified? More men than women are diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, and most are over the age of 60. There are around 1 million people in the U.S. living with it, and the economic impact is huge. $51.9 billion between lost wages, Social Security, Medicare, doctor's visits and medications, and family caregiving. With nearly 90,000 new cases each year, it's the second most commonly diagnosed neurological disease after Alzheimer's. It's generally not considered a genetic disease, but there is a 10 to 15% increased risk if a family member has it. Risk factors include exposure to paraquat, an herbicide commonly used on farms. The fungicides Manab and Mancozeb, DDT, and TCE, a carcinogen, may also be a factor, as does experiencing a head injury. According to research, regions with the prevalence of agriculture and heavy manufacturing industries have higher incidence of the disease. Young onset Parkinson's has more of a genetic factor. If you get Parkinson's and are still working, contact an employment law attorney so you know your rights. Check out the website PDWise, www.pdwise.com, started by Alan Cole. He was diagnosed in 2016 at age 48, and he continues to teach at the University of Texas, Austin, while living with Parkinson's disease. How does Parkinson's develop? Neurons in the basal ganglia die or become impaired, and alpha-synuclein clumps form and impede signals from the brain to muscles. Fewer neurons lessen production of dopamine, a neurotransmitter, and muscle control is lost. The tipping point is when 80% of cells that produce dopamine have died off, but unfortunately, it's too late by that point to reverse symptoms. There is a diagnostic scale, the Hone and Yar scale, with levels from 1 to 5 based on what symptoms are present. It can take 20 years to move to the higher levels. Learn more at this site, www.parkinsons.org, understanding Parkinson's / what is Parkinson's / stages. What are the impacts on caregivers? Given that most cases show up in men, it is common that women end up doing a lot of the caregiving. The slow progression can mask the need for more help until there's a crisis situation. As the disease progresses and the person with Parkinson's disease loses the ability and desire to socialize, caregivers are also more likely to stay home. Withdrawal and isolation can cause depression in caregivers if they are unable to leave their partner to get their own social needs met. Communication dwindles, causing the relationship to change in unforeseen ways. How can this outcome be minimized? Building a community is key, so find others nearby who are dealing with the same situation. No one understands like other caregivers. Ask a friend or a family member to stay with your loved one so you can go out. Sometimes there are volunteer organizations who will provide this service. Are there medications that help manage Parkinson's? Yes, research has come a long way in the last 20 years. It's important to get a tailored diagnosis, as different drugs treat different symptoms. Some form of levodopa is common. Other options include one of the dopamine agonists, an MAD inhibitor, or an anticholinergic. One common medication, Sinemet, combines dopamine and carbidopa to replace lost dopamine production. The carbidopa helps lessen symptoms of nausea and depression. Find a neurologist who specializes in movement disorders if possible. Medications will need to be adjusted as the disease progresses and symptoms evolved. There is a commonly described experience of being, quote unquote, on, off, depending on the level of dopamine that's available. When medications are working, the person is on and can control their body to some extent. They go off when the level drops, and dyskinesia or uncontrolled muscle spasms become common. When oral medications stop working, there are several surgical options that have become available in the last 20 years. DBS, deep brain stimulation, acts like a brain pacemaker and may be indicated for those who no longer respond to medications. Getting this implant may help with ADLs, activities of daily living, but of course there are risks associated with any surgery. The Duopa pump delivers medication in the form of a gel directly to the small intestine through a tube that's inserted into the stomach. It ensures that the drug enters the body more directly and consistently, also making activities of daily living easier to manage. This reduces the on-off cycle, as described earlier. Disadvantages include that the pump has to be carried during the day and requires daily changing of cassettes and monitoring of insertion site. What are some non-medical approaches? An exercise program is a key component in delaying the progression to more serious symptoms, and the program you'll actually do is the best one. Establishing an exercise routine as soon as the diagnosis is received and maintaining it is key to its effectiveness. There is an Austin, Texas area organization called Power for Parkinson's, and they offer free exercise, dance, and singing classes, both in person and on YouTube. Look up powerforparkinsons.org. Another well-regarded program is Rock Steady Boxing, based in Indianapolis, Indiana, with trainers all over the world. From their website, quote, various studies in the 1980s and 1990s support that vigorous exercise, emphasizing gross motor movement, balance, core strength, rhythm, and hand-eye coordination, can favorably impact range of motion, flexibility, posture, gait, and activities of daily living. More recent studies, most notably at the Cleveland Clinic, focus on the concept of intense forced exercise and suggest that certain types of exercise are neuroprotective, which means that it is a type of exercise that may actually slow disease progression, unquote. Find out more at rocksteadyboxing.org. Music has also been shown to positively impact symptoms because of the multiple ways it engages the brain and body. Our brains are actually malleable and can change based on what activities we engage in. If you've always wanted to learn an instrument, now's the time, according to a 2022 article from Psychology Today. Even just using a beat to practice walking shows results. Research into a cure is ongoing, and here are some online resources where you can keep up on the latest news: www.parkinsons.org and www.michaeljfox.org. Parkinson's has been described as a cruel disease because the person remains aware of the disabilities as they encroach on life. A quote from the renowned neurologist, naturalist, writer, and scientist Oliver Sacks. Above all, I have been a sentient being, a thinking animal on this beautiful planet, and that in itself has been an enormous privilege and adventure. Johanna Munson, Peace of Mind Guide.